Hi, I'm here to talk about books. And also I have a cold, so sorry if my cold voice bothers you, but I was too excited about this to wait to film, and I made a PowerPoint so that I don't forget anything. So let's just get into these books. Okay, first of all, I want to preference and preface are two different words. Preface this video by saying a few things. First thing, I only have one of these books with me. Oh, I didn't grab it. I'll have to grab it in a second. I only have one of these books. The other ones I borrowed from the library because it's free and it doesn't take up space. A lot of videos I see about books, I'm not saying all of them, it's not everybody, but some of them, some people, kind of act like you're like not a real reader if you don't own all of the books that you read, and that's kind of just silly because books can be expensive and they take up space. Most of the books I own aren't here because I live in a small apartment and I don't have all of my money to spend on books. So use the library because it's free and it's awesome. And the Libby app is really good and it's free, and you just connect your library card with it, and then you can borrow ebooks and audiobooks and read them on your phone or your, devices, whatever. And that's a great way to do it, so like don't feel bad about that. Just wanted to say that because there's like a weird attitude about it sometimes on the internet, and I think that that's weird. Anyway, second thing, I didn't like some of the books on this list. I really didn't. And if they were your favorite book, please don't feel offended. I'm glad they were your favorite because that means someone liked them, and that's a good thing. And that means we're different, and differences are good, and it's cool to hear other people's perspectives. So like, if you disagree with me, tell me why, because I want to know what your thoughts are too. Third thing, there were 2 books this year that I didn't finish, and they were The Secret Life of Addie LaRue, which is a really popular one, and basically it's like about this girl who makes a deal with the devil to live forever, but then no one remembers her, and I didn't finish it because I was so bored. That is like the coolest idea for a book, and it just, I don't know. Reading the main character, she's like 300 years old at the present day that you're reading it, and her character is just so bland, and you're like, you've lived for 300 years and you're not more interesting than this? Lame. Like, I know people who have lived for way less years than that, and they're way more interesting. So, it's a pretty long one, and I was just not going to force myself to read a book that I found boring. And there was just, like, some unnecessary sexual content in it. And so I just didn't enjoy it, didn't want to read it. The other one was The Fifth Season, by N.K. Jemisin, I believe. And The Secret Life of Addie LaRue is by V.E. Schwab. Anyway, Fifth Season, I was also just a little bit bored. I didn't read very much of it, and that is one that I might pick up later because I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I honestly don't know enough to like tell you a synopsis even. I started it on a flight and I just didn't want to read it, so I might read it later. That happens sometimes, so don't feel bad about that either if you like. I don't know, don't force yourself to read books if you're not enjoying it, is my philosophy. Okay. The first one, I gotta go get it. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. The first one is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and look at how pretty this edition is. It has black pages. Look at the inside cover of it. Oh, I love it. My husband got this for me for Christmas, and I am extremely excited to reread it again because it is like my favorite book ever. 5 out of 5 stars. This is my favorite classic novel. It is really cool. And what I like about gothic horror is that it makes you feel scared, but not in like a super gory way. Like, it doesn't make you feel horror movie scared, because I don't like that type of scared. It just is like slowly builds up and you're like, wow, this is really cool. Also, this was written when the tuberculosis epidemic was happening, and it was really scary and people didn't know what was happening. It was kind of a new thing, new symptoms, they didn't know how to treat it yet. And so reading about vampirism with the context of tuberculosis is just a really cool thing. There's a podcast called Lore, and it's by Mahnke, and I definitely recommend it. It's a really cool podcast. I need to listen to it more because he tells really cool stories. But the very first episode, it's called They Made a Tonic, and it is about vampirism with the context of tuberculosis. So I recommend listening to that if you're more interested in that, because it's really cool. Also, another YouTuber, Noelle Gallagher, she's really cool. She's getting her master's degree in literature, and she took a vampire class, and she talked about this in like her most recent video. I'll see if I can find it and link it, and you should watch it because she's cool. But she talks about how Dracula combines like chivalric romance with gothic ideas, and that is just like such a cool idea, and I really want to research more into that. That's just something I really like about Dracula, is that there's really cool historical context to it, but it's still a very intriguing idea as like a concept itself, and I mean, it's a classic for a reason. Another thing with classics is that I would say this is fairly accessible of a read. I know classics turn a lot of people off because they're like, I'm afraid I'm like too dumb to read it, and you're not. You're not too dumb to read it. So stop thinking that. Knock it off. Sorry, that was aggressive, but you're not dumb. You're a smart person. And there's also nothing wrong. Like, if you want to read a classic like this and you are afraid of not knowing things in it, that's okay, because we don't speak this type of language anymore. It's old. It's written with old styles and old phrases, and you might not know some of the words and phrases, and that's okay. So my advice for reading classics is read it with your phone next to you and Google things you don't know, because then you learn more, and it's okay to Google things because we just don't speak that way anymore, and that's not that's not on you, we just don't speak that way anymore. So like, that's okay, and it's okay if it takes you twice as long to read a classic because you don't know those words and phrases, because that's a normal thing. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars, would definitely recommend this. I'm so excited to read this again, especially with this edition, because it's so pretty. And it comes with a bookmark in it. Every book should have that. I love this. I'm so excited. If you couldn't tell, I'm excited, okay? Anyway, next book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars, and so this book's about a man who goes back to his hometown for a funeral, and then he like remembers these like crazy whimsical things that happened in his childhood that he'd forgotten. And this book is so magical, and it kind of just feels like you're in a dream. You know how dreams are weird and like they don't really make sense, but when you're in the dream you're like, yeah, that makes sense, and then you're out of your dream and you're like, what? That's what it feels like. Some of the scenes are a little bit intense and like a little bit scary, but I'm a wimp and I was okay. So like, if you're nervous about reading something that's scary, you could look up if there's any like trigger warnings in it. I don't remember it being too violent or anything. I read it a while ago, so I don't remember like a ton of the details, to be honest. But I wasn't super scared, so I mean, but there were some intense parts, but I think that just made it, that drove the plot in a really nice way. I like this book because it leaves you with questions, but it also makes you feel like whimsical, and Neil Gaiman just has this like really beautiful writing style, and I think it blends like the like childish desire for magic that we all have with also some like harsh realities of life in a really beautiful way that makes you reflect on yourself and have hope for the future even. It was a really short read for me. I would read it again. I want to read more stuff by Neil Gaiman. I love his writing style, and it's just really fun. So that is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. The next book I read was The Redfoot Murders by Alexander Costa. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. To be honest, I read this book because my sister's boss, he's like no longer a boss, she moved and everything, she has a different job. But my sister's boss wrote it, and so I was like, oh yeah, I'll be supportive and read this, and then I really liked it. So I read it because I was being supportive, but then I really liked it, so I do recommend it. And this is a debut book, and it's a thriller mystery thing, and those are hard to write. It's hard to write a good thriller mystery, but he does a great job. Like, the only reason I took a star off is because there are some grammatical errors, and I think some of the sentences could have been structured a little nicer, you know? But that happens, especially with the debut book. And, like, I honestly can only see Costa's writing style going up, because it was good. There's this twist at the end that I did not expect at all, and it ends on a huge cliffhanger. So, Mr. Costa, if you're watching this, I know you're not, but if you are, please write the second one faster. I want to know what happens. Like, I need to know. All jokes aside, though, I do look forward to reading more by this author, and I do highly suggest reading this. I think he has a lot of potential, and I just really enjoyed it. I think it's a good book. Okay, next one, House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I gave this a 5 out of 5. I really loved this book, guys. It was so good, and this was a really popular one on social media, which is like where I heard about it. I heard a lot of people talking about it, and I honestly think it lived up to the hype. So basically, it's about this guy who is a social worker for magical children, and he gets sent on this like top secret assignment, and it's the most dangerous children, and then he gets there and he kind of discovers a lot about these children and that they're like not dangerous, and a lot about himself. This book is so heartwarming. I loved the characters. It was very wholesome, and I would really suggest, like, if you are looking for just a wholesome read that will make you feel happy, read this book. I really liked it. I know there was some controversy because T.J. Klune took inspiration from things that have happened to Indigenous children in Canada, I believe. And I think what people had a problem with is that he's not Indigenous, and so they felt like it wasn't his place to write about it. But I think I'm not really the right person to say anything about it. I'm not Indigenous, and I don't live in Canada. So, you know, I don't know a lot about the things that have gone on, but in the past year there's been a lot that's come out about some very bad mistreatment towards those children, and no children should ever be treated badly, ever, no matter who they are. But I think that if you kind of set that aside and look at what this book is saying, that's what the book is saying, is that children should never be treated badly, and that differences are good, and we should have compassion towards people who are different than us. And it's kind of about overcoming hate and seeing, you know, lots of perspectives, and I think that's a really good thing, and I think that is helpful to know those different perspectives. And it's heartwarming, and the characters are just beautiful. The writing style is beautiful, and I really like this book, and I would definitely recommend it. The next one is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Very, very different from The House in the Cerulean Sea. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and this book is insane. Like, it is like almost hard to describe because it's just weird. It's about this expedition that goes through this, it's called Area X, and it's like controlled by the government. It's a group of people, and if you don't like books that don't have like a solid ending and answers, you won't like it. Because this book, the ending, you're like, what just happened? The whole book is what just happened, basically. This is the first book I read that has a really unreliable narrator, and I found that really interesting. I haven't read books like that before, because when you're reading it, you don't know if what the narrator is saying is true, if it's actually happening, like what is even real. I've heard other people describe that it's like being in someone else's acid trip. And I've never done acid. I don't plan to, ever. but I feel like that's an accurate description because it is just very weird. It wasn't like my most favorite book I've ever read. I did like it. There were some parts that kind of grossed me out, which is why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and not 5 out of 5 stars. But it was cool. I sat down to read this and I finished it in like, I think like an hour and a half because I just had to know what happened. Like, it is just very quick, very intense. You don't know what's happening. There is a movie. I haven't seen the movie. I've heard that it's really different than the book, so maybe if you didn't like the movie, you could try the book. But yeah, I can't say too much about the movie because I've never seen it. But from what I've heard, it's different, which happens. But, oh yeah, there's also more books in this series that have different characters, so I probably will read those in the future because I did like it. It is interesting. And also, just so you know, there is some swearing. It says the F word quite a few times, which I wasn't expecting, and I kind of didn't love that. So if you're younger, or if you're like wondering if your child should read it, maybe wait till you're a little older, or wait till your child is older, because there is some swearing in it. So whatever your preference is, just be aware that that is in there. But yeah, overall, I liked it. Okay, this is when we get into some that I just wasn't a fan of. And the first one that I wasn't a fan of is called My Sister the Serial Killer by Mahnke. Braithwaite. I'm so sorry, I definitely said that wrong. I apologize. I gave this a 3 out of 5, but honestly I think it's more like a 2 or a 1. I didn't like it at all. Just, okay, it's what the title suggests. Basically, it's about a girl, the main character, her sister kills her boyfriend, she always says it's an accident, she has to like help her cover it up. But I just didn't like it. The morals in this book are seriously messed up throughout the whole thing. Kind of the whole time I was like, ew, that's a gross mindset. Like, I didn't like the morals at all. The ending kind of played into me not liking the morals. I won't spoil it, but the ending was ridiculous. If you've read it, tell me how you felt about the ending, because I didn't like it, and I felt like it wasn't a good message to send. Sorry, that's so vague, but I don't want to spoil it in case you do want to read it. A lot of reviews that I saw on Goodreads said that they thought it was, like, hilarious, and I just don't see how. Because, like, sometimes dark humor could be funny, like, depending on what it is or whatever situation, but I just didn't, like, it didn't feel humorous at all. So I was like, where are you getting this dark humor from? Like, why do you think it's funny? Because it isn't. And the writing style was okay, but the storyline just sucked. And I wouldn't recommend this book at all. Honestly, I didn't like it. The morals weren't good. The storyline wasn't good. The ending wasn't good. Don't read it. Next. Another one I didn't like. All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. I gave this a 2 out of 5. And again, the morals in this book were so messed up. I just did not understand. Basically, it's about this girl who goes back to her hometown. Her best friend went missing when they were in high school, and like another girl has gone missing, and she has to like figure out what happens. And my biggest problem with this book is the style that it's written in, because you start with like the first day that she's back in her hometown, but then it jumps to like day 15, and then you're reading it backwards. So you're reading like day 15 and then 14. So then by the time you get like back to day 2 or whatever, it's like, wait, what even happened? Like, it's hard to remember, I feel like. And so, and the style could be cool, but I didn't like it. And by the time you get to the end, you realize that she knew exactly what had happened at day 15, but with the way that it's written, it's like she has no clue. And it's like, Kate, that doesn't make sense because she knew what happened. But when you're reading day 15, it's like she has no clue what happened, and she definitely knows what happens. Also, just the logic behind every single decision in this book is bad. I don't want to spoil it again, but adults should be able to make better decisions than they did in this book. All of the adults in this book, in the past like storyline and in the present storyline, made bad decisions. And the ending, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without spoiling. The ending worked out for the main character, and I don't think it should have. Yeah. I don't recommend it. It's confusing, the logic was bad, the morals made me cringe, the writing style is weird. And also, okay, this is like not important, but the title is All the Missing Girls, and it's literally about like one girl, and then the other girl has to do with, it's about two girls, and so it's like all the missing two people. Next. Circe by Madeline Miller. Okay, I did like this book. 4 out of 5 stars from me. It was another one that was so popular on social media, and that's how I heard about it. And I was a little worried that it was going to be overhyped, but I did end up liking it. I was a big Percy Jackson girl in my heyday. Still am. Percy Jackson forever, am I right? And I'm also a humanities major, so like mythology is right up my alley. So I was really excited to read another perspective about a character from mythology. This book was a pretty slow read for me, which doesn't happen often. I'm a really fast reader, but this one took me a while because it is just slow. The writing is very lyrical though, and I did want to know what happened. I just didn't feel the desire to read big chunks at a time. So yeah, so it was slow, but I did really like it. Let's see, what else do I have to say about it? So it's about Circe, who is a goddess who we meet in the Odyssey, and I really liked reading from her perspective and kind of seeing some of the reasoning behind her decisions. I've always loved the Odyssey, and the Odyssey has so many, like, you can deep dive into every part of the Odyssey and spend so much time on it, and I really love that part. That's why I love it so much. And I like Circe's section a lot. So seeing Circe's section from her point of view was really cool. And it came in handy because I ended up studying the Odyssey this past semester in one of my classes. And so having that perspective in mind and then having the original Odyssey perspective in mind was interesting for my class discussions and made me think a lot deeper about the things that we talked about in my class. So I really enjoyed that. I would recommend this with the caveat that rape happens in this book. So if that's something that'd be triggering for you or really hard for you to read, skip it. I mean, I was able to kind of skim through that part pretty quickly, but it is in there and it is crucial to her character development, unfortunately. And it does happen, unfortunately. But yeah, if that's gonna be hard for you, don't put yourself through that and just skip it for now or forever. Whatever works for you, whatever's best, but just be aware. That is in this book. Next, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. So I picked this book up because I love Dracula. I've always felt this like weird connection to Southern housewives, even though I'm from Idaho. I've never been to the South. I know one person from Louisiana. She's lovely, but she's not even a housewife. Like, she's literally... Anyway, I don't know why. Like, when I was in high school, I played this, like, middle-aged Southern lady in one of my plays, and it was, like, my favorite role ever, and I just connected on this, like, soul level with this character, and so I just love Southern ladies. I don't know why. I just think it's so fun. So I picked it up because I was like, yeah, I love Dracula. Southern people are cool. Like, this is gonna be so fun. And what I didn't know is that this is like a straight up horror novel. It's so scary. Like, I read it really fast because I wanted to know what happened, but I also had to put it down for a few days because I literally, one night I read it before bed, and I had to like, my husband had to like hold me. I was terrified. It gave me nightmares. I had to say prayers to help myself feel better. Like, it's really scary. It's a really scary book. Yeah, don't expect like a fun little novel about like Southern moms in vampires because it's scary. It's terrifying. And it's really gory. So I had to like skip through those sections, and there is rape in it also. And I skipped through that too because I didn't want to read that, and it was really scary. If I had known it had been this scary, I wouldn't have read it. But I did enjoy reading it, and the writing style is really good, and the plot is good, and it definitely, like, you want to know what happens. So if you like horror, then yeah, read it, and you have nerves of steel, you could read it, but I'm a baby. I was so scared, okay? I originally gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, but I honestly think I'll just take my rating off for this because I'm not going to read it again. And, excuse me, and rereading is kind of like I love rereading, so like, that's my qualification for a high rating, I guess, is if I reread it, and I wouldn't reread this, so I don't really know if I can give it a fair rating, because it's not my genre, and it terrified me, but it was really well written. So yeah, just look things up about books and what genre they are before you just dive in and start reading them, maybe. Sandra, it's a good idea, because it was so scary. Like, this is a scary book. Good. The cover is really cool, but just scary. Next. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I gave this a 2 out of 5. I could make an entire video ranting about this book, like with spoilers, ranting about this book, because I have so many thoughts and I just didn't like it. So, okay, general synopsis is that it's the year 2044 and everyone spends their time in this virtual reality called the Oasis. And the creator of the Oasis dies, and his will is like, he makes a treasure hunt in this virtual reality, and he's like, hey, whoever can solve this treasure hunt wins everything that I own. So it's like a ton of money, owning the Oasis. It's like a big deal. So you follow the main character, Wade, through trying to like solve this treasure hunt and win and get all the money and whatever. And I was recommended this book because it has a ton of 80s references in it, and I've always loved the 80s. Like, I love 80s music, I love 80s fashion, I love 80s, like, movies and TV shows. I just have always thought it's so fun ever since I was little. Like, I don't know, I just love it. I just think it's fun, okay? And I don't know. I didn't like the way the 80s references were in here because they were so specific and there was such an elitist attitude about it. And it kind of felt like somebody just looked up like the most niche specific things about the 80s and then just plopped them into this book every 5 seconds. And I hated the main character. He is so rude, he's super elitist, and I just had a hard time rooting for him. Because he's, like, with, like, the 80s and being elitist and stuff, it's like, for half the book, he's like, oh, I'm so much better than you because I understood this very, 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 very specific 80s reference, and you didn't, and that makes you lowly and worse than me, even though I have no good qualities, and I'm so rude to everyone around me, but I'm better than you because I understood this reference. And it's like, what? No, you're not better. Stop being rude. So I just didn't like that. The world building was so good, and the idea of this book is like really good, and I really wanted to love it, and I just didn't, because I love 80s stuff. I love sci-fi. But when the main character is as awful as he is, how can you like the book? I don't know, some people don't have to like the characters, but I just don't like the way a lot of the events were handled. It's hard to be specific about that without spoiling it. I don't want to spoil it. I'm glad I read it, because otherwise I think I would have built it up more in my mind, like, and then I would have been even more disappointed. yeah. I hate Wade, the main character. I just hate him. He sucks. He does. Yeah. I mean, what else to even say about it? Because Anyway, would I recommend this? If you've been wanting to read it, yeah, read it. But, I don't know. If you were planning on reading it, just don't read it. Because I don't think it should have gotten the hype that it did. Because I didn't like it. If you did, tell me why you liked it. Or if you also didn't like it, rant with me. Because Anyway, I don't want to spend too much more time on hating this book as much as I did. Because I wanted to love it. And maybe I'll still watch the movie. I haven't seen it and I've heard the movie is good, so maybe I'll still watch the movie. But just boo! Boo from me. Anyway, next. You Belong to Me by Mary Higgins Clark. I gave this 4 out of 5. I liked this book a lot. It's a murder mystery thriller. It's like about this girl who goes missing on a cruise ship. And then years later, this psychologist is like digging a little deeper and she finds out things she's not supposed to, and it's like, ooh, fun. There's a twist at the end. I didn't expect it. I liked it a lot. Some of the reviews I read, people said they did expect it because they've read like a lot of thrillers, but I didn't, so I don't know. I mean, I guess it just depends on how good you are at expecting twists, but I didn't. Mary Higgins Clark has a really good writing style. I loved her writing style. I was definitely hooked. Her character building, her world building is really good. You care about the characters. You want to know what's going on. It keeps you moving. Keeps you moving through. And it reminded me of the TV show Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury. I don't know how many of you have watched that. It's an older show. I watched it all the time growing up with my mom. And so it's like very nostalgic to me. And it's just like that classic 80s murder show where it's not that scary or like gory at all, but you still want to know, and I don't know. Kind of like Diagnosis Murder is like that too, where it's like not that scary and you're like, why are people always dying? And they're just like random old people who are like there and ready to solve the crime, but you just love it. You have to love that. I mean, you don't have to, but I love that. So I really liked that kind of style. And I definitely prefer something that's like that, like, because like, say back to Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying, that was scary and gory, and I don't like that kind of stuff, because it terrified me. But this didn't scare me. It didn't make me afraid for my life, okay? It was just fun. Fun murder. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so it's pretty fast-paced. I love the writing style. My lovely friend let me borrow it from her, and she has like a ton of other Mary Higgins Clark's books. I might have to borrow more because I did like her writing style and I would like to read more. So, recommend it. Next, Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. It's about a failed bank robbery that turns into a hostage situation, but not in like a scary way. In like a whoops, fun kind of way. This is a character-driven book, very character-heavy, and I really, really like the writing style. It's really wholesome considering it's about like a hostage situation, but I don't know, it just dives into some different types of relationships, dives into marriages, friendships. There's a father-son relationship that is struggling, and they have to kind of figure it out and figure out how to work together, and some of those family dynamics. And I just really liked the way it dove into those relationships. I'm gonna read a sentence out of the synopsis because I think that does a better job describing it than I do. And it says, Anxious People's whimsical plot serves up unforgettable insights into the human condition and a gentle reminder to be compassionate to all the anxious people we encounter every day. I like that description because, I mean, it's true, the world's so full of anxiety, and it's important to be compassionate. I mean, because everyone has things they worry about, you know? So, I I think it's a good book. I liked it a lot. It's really wholesome. I want to buy it so that I can reread it a bunch of times because I really liked it. And I recommend. So read that. Next. They Both Die at the End, Adam Silvera. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It might be less than that, honestly. It was okay. Just another book. It was really popular on social media, and I just thought it was okay, I guess. I didn't really like it that much. I thought the 2 main characters were like really shallowly written, and it was hard for me to like them because it was like they both just had this list of characteristics, and then all of their actions just fell into the stereotypes of those characteristics. And it wasn't deep. I don't know. Also has that like insta love trope where you like instantly fall in love after a day, and sometimes that can work, but it didn't feel realistic to me. I think because the characters were shallowly written, it didn't feel realistic. And it made me feel a little existential because it talks about death so much, but not in a helpful way. And like I'm very religious and I have very solid beliefs on what happens after death, but I still love learning about other people's thoughts because I think other people's perspectives are very important, and I just think it's interesting. And so, you know, I'm open to hearing what other people's thoughts were, but I don't know, this book just didn't offer anything up like that. It was just like, I mean, they both die at the end. That's what it's called, and that's not a spoiler. That's literally what happens. But it just was anticlimactic, and I just didn't like it. Like, I didn't think it offered up any commentary. It was just about boring characters who do boring things and then die. Honestly, that's kind of harsh, but I don't know. It just didn't live up to the hype. I didn't like it. That's all I have to say. Song of Achilles, Madeline Miller. Okay, this is another extremely popular book. So I thought I'd give it a try. And it's by Madeline Miller, who wrote Circe, and I liked Circe, so I was like, okay, I'll try it. And it's okay. I liked the writing style. Madeline Miller's a good writer. Her writing style is very beautiful. It's very lyrical. Again, I love mythology. I was excited to read that. I didn't know, though, that it was going to be a romance. And I kind of wish that I did, because there's, like, sexual content in it that I didn't like reading at all. I don't like reading that, no matter who it is. In this case, it is gay. Because it's about Achilles and Patroclus. So it's not because they were gay, it's just because I don't like reading any sexual content. It just makes me uncomfortable. It's not my thing. So I kind of avoid romance because of that. I did care about the characters a lot, though. And I do think it was very well written. And I do think it was an interesting perspective. I haven't actually read the Iliad, which is about the Trojan War and about Achilles. But I'm familiar with the story, so it was cool to hear another perspective, versus just the one that I'm always familiar with. I wouldn't read it again because of sexual content. Don't like that. Won't read it. I was able to just kind of skim through it and read it really fast and not really read it, you know what I mean? Because I just don't like that. That's not my thing. So if you're younger, or if you are looking at it for a child or friend or whatever, skip it till you're older, maybe, or don't read it because it's has older content that's not appropriate for younger children or even teenagers, I would say. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think ultimately, I'm glad that I read it because it's good to have other people's perspectives and things that I'm not used to hearing about or seeing or whatever. But I wish that more people, when they talked about this book, because it was so hyped up, but no one mentioned anything. Like, I didn't know it was a romance at all. And I found that kind of weird that no one mentioned that. And no one mentioned any sexual content. So just know it's in there. Up to you. Whatever you want to do. Your life. 3 out of 5 stars. Next, this is the last book on my list, and I really loved it. It's called A Man Called Ove. Actually, I think it's Ove? 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 Fredrik Backman. It takes place in Sweden. It's a Swedish name. I don't think it's pronounced Ove. I'm pretty sure that's wrong. So I'm sorry that if I'm pronouncing it wrong, because I'm 95% sure that I am. Anyway, I love this book. It's the second book by Fredrik Backman that I read. The other one was Anxious People. And I really want to read more by him because I like his writing. I love his writing style. It's really, really good. I love the way he writes characters. This one's about this grumpy old man. He just lost his wife, and he has some new neighbors move in, and they're young and rambunctious, and he just, it's kind of just about that relationship and how he grows and learns and things, and he's just such a lovable character. Like, he's just so cute, and a lot of the commentary, like, throughout this book, like, his personal thoughts or whatever are, like, about being grumpy that young people don't know how to, like, back up a trailer or build stuff or fix a bike, stuff like that. And it kind of reminded me of my late grandpa and, like, my dad a little bit, which just made me laugh. But he's just so selfless. Like, he's such a selfless character, and he does so much service for the people in his community, and I just love that. I love his character, and that selflessness and service also reminded me of my dad, which made me love the character even more. My dad's like the most selfless person you'll ever meet. He's so willing to help everybody, and he's just hilarious, and he'll grumble about modern technology and people not knowing how to do things, and it just makes me laugh. And I don't know, like, that, seeing that growing up, that examples taught me a lot, so I just love being able to read it in a book because it was familiar to me. Anyway, lovable characters, such a cute storyline, amazing writing, read it in one sitting. I want to buy it so I can just read it over and over again. Please read this book. I love it. It made me cry a little bit. It's so fun. That's it. So that's all my books that I read this year. I hope you found this entertaining. If you want to see more book videos from me, let me know, because I love reading and I love talking about books and I love watching videos about other people talking about books. So I'm really excited to read more in 2022 and make time for that, because I think that it is a good hobby and helps you learn, and I like it. So tell me, what was your favorite book that you read in 2021, and what was your least favorite book? And have you read any books that I talked about, and your thoughts on those, because I also want to hear that. And I hope that you guys have a fantastic day and a fantastic new year. I'm filming this on New Year. Oh, it's New Year's Eve. It's about to be 2022 literally tomorrow. That's wild. Anyway, have a good day. I love you guys, and I hope that your new year is awesome.